Hey guys, welcome back. Joe Brunsman, insurance broker of the stars. It's a new year. I've got a new background, and I am back with a new depressing video on why the war in Ukraine should terrify your CISO, stress your CFO, perplex your insurance broker, and worry your MSP. Now, quick history lesson here. We got to go back a few years. The invasion of Crimea in Ukraine back in 2017 and the NotPetya virus. So ostensibly, this piece of malware was designed by Russia to target specific Ukrainian business types. Now, unfortunately, this ended up impacting economies and companies all over the world, including France, Germany, Italy, Poland, the UK, and of course, the United States. The White House assessed that the damage from this piece of malware alone was in excess of $10 billion. And it was dubbed as the most destructive and, of course, costly cyber attack in world history. Now, with that much on the line in terms of money, of course, there are going to be various lawsuits that arise. Now, interestingly, one just got settled, at least at the state level, and this was Merck v. Ace American. Now, this incident took place, of course, in June of 2017, and it wasn't until January of 2022 that the court case actually was resolved. Now, Merck ultimately, according to the New Jersey Superior Court, has won $1.75 billion in their lawsuit. All of this centered around what we call the acts of war exclusion, and we're going to see that a little bit later here. But one thing you really need to understand is, first of all, you're not Merck if you're watching this video. You don't have the resources to fight this type of legal battle. And two, if I was a betting man, I'd say with this much money on the line, the court case is only going to continue from here. I'm sure they have all types of various means and methods to try and continue this lawsuit to either A, win their court case, or B, at least stretch out the time until they have to pay up, because $1.75 billion, that's a large amount of money. Now, what you're going to see in front of you here is the war and civil war exclusion. And this one in particular had a cyber terrorism carve back. So I'm not going to read this whole thing to you, but if you're interested, you can pause the video and watch it here. But interestingly, the public, there was a big backlash against cyber insurance companies because now all these various companies who were purchasing cyber insurance are going, hey, wait, this isn't fair. How are we supposed to deal with this? So they brought in this cyber terrorism carve back in some policies offered by cyber insurers. Now you'll see here that the war and civil war exclusion does not apply to cyber terrorism, and then it actually defines cyber terrorism. But then there's a caveat below that on number 2 when one or both of the following actually applies, and those are circumstantial. Now, how is this actually going to play out? I'm not really sure. So I've got a master's in cyber law. I've been looking at this for a while. Would I rather have this than not have something like this? Yes. Can anybody tell you that 100% this is going to cover you if, let's say, there's some new strain of malware attributed to Russia that deals with the invasion of Ukraine and your business gets wrapped up into that? No, there's no 100% guarantees in insurance. So suffice to say, I'd rather have it than not, but this is something that you need to go out and talk to your insurance broker about because this very well could come into play just like it did 5 years ago. Now, of course, we already have cyber attacks going on in Ukraine. As a matter of fact, it already has its own Wikipedia page, believe it or not. Now, from what I've seen in the news so far, these appear to be a lot more targeted in that they are generally denial or distributed denial of service attack, also known as DDoS attacks. There's also some reports of data wipers in play, so make sure you got your backups ready and offline. If you think that maybe you could fall into that. Now, of course, Russia has denied attribution, but one thing to really understand here is this could easily get much, much worse. Looking at what some of the Russian state is in the past and what other countries around the world have done, this appears to be very targeted and very restrained as far as the cyber war goes as I'm recording this video, but it could easily get much, much worse, and it could do so very quickly. Now, it's actually bad enough that CISA, so the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, along with the FBI they issued a joint advisory dealing just with the malware used in Ukraine. Now, if I move my beautiful little face here to the center of the screen, you'll see that some of the additional security measures that they recommended were enable MFA, which hopefully you already have, antivirus, anti-malware programs, conducting regular scans, strong spam filters, updating software. That's going to be really important here in the second, and filtering network traffic. So as I move my face back, here we go. So beyond the cyber terrorism carve back, how else could cyber insurance come into play here? What's another thing I think you really need to know and understand? Well, it's this right here. Increasingly, we're starting to see this type of exclusion being put on cyber insurance policies, and I'm sure that this is only going to become more and more prevalent as time goes forward. Now, what does this effectively say? There's an exclusion, right, if a claim is based on or arising out of any vulnerability or exploitation of a computer system if, as of the date of that vulnerability or exploitation, the developer or manufacturer has withdrawn or no longer supports such system or software. That's the big issue there. So if you have legacy hardware or software, maybe now is a really good time to first take a look at your cyber insurance policy, and second, start looking at how are you going to upgrade these systems. Because like I said before, I think this is only going to become more and more prevalent, and I would just presume as time goes forward, this is going to be a very standard exclusion that we're going to see on cyber insurance policies. Why? If you have systems out there that are just unsupported, that's a moral hazard for the insurance company to keep insuring those types of systems. Why? Because maybe it's cheaper for you to pay your deductible if something goes wrong than for you to purchase a new system. And that's where cyber insurance companies are really going to try and stem the bleeding. Now, maybe you're just saying, hey, we should just go out and maybe it's not on my policy yet, or hey, surprise, it's on my policy. My insurance guy didn't tell me. So, hey, let's just go out and buy new hardware or software, right? Like, how hard can it be? Well, software is probably pretty easy in most respects. Hardware, that's going to be an issue. All right, so first of all, we're looking at the current chip shortage. So here's a new article that actually just came out. This is from the Register. Dell PC backlog woes strike again amid component shortfall. So you'll see here we are still experiencing shortages of integrated circuits across a wide range of devices. That includes network controllers, microcontrollers. They go into our products and solutions. The result, we are seeing an impact across client systems, servers, and storage. We expect PC backlog to grow in Q1. A plethora of parts that go across all of our devices continue to be in short supply. And then he goes on the server side, they're missing parts. These continue to be in short supply and demand is ahead of that, said the Dell executive. Now, of course, in true 2020s fashion, Ukraine is crucial for chip production. So this is from Fierce Electronics. Ukraine war could hurt supplies of neon and palladium needed for chips. Ukraine makes more than 90% of the high-grade neon in-gas phase lasers used to make chips produced by U.S. semiconductor companies. The gas is a byproduct of course, Russian steel manufacturing, which is purified in Ukraine. Russia provides a third of the palladium metal used in sensors and memory products produced by U.S. companies. Russia is also a crucial source of C4F6, which is hexafluorocyclobutene, which several U.S. suppliers buy and purify for advanced node logic device etching and advanced lithography processes for chip production. And of course, if we start having additional tariffs or we have additional sanctions, or let's say Russia just goes, hey, we're just going to cut off the supply of palladium and we're just going to skyrocket the cost of chip production, that could really be an issue. Or maybe they just shut off the exportation in Ukraine of neon gas. That's going to be a big problem when you take out 90% of anything in the supply chain. Now, of course, you'll see here, hey, maybe you can even order the stuff. Hey, maybe it's there, Maybe it's made somewhere else. I'm sure that these chip manufacturers are already trying to figure out ways to plug the holes in their supply chain. Maybe you could just order something, right? How bad could that be? Well, that's going to be an issue too, because right here, the New York Times, a normal supply chain, unlikely in 2022. It says the chaos at ports, warehouses, and retailers will probably persist throughout the year and perhaps even longer, which is disappointing. Now, the other thing you always have to consider as well is, well, there's also a lot of oil that comes out of Russia, and we're already seeing that oil prices are getting quite expensive along with the price of natural gas. That's going to have an impact on just the sheer cost of shipping. It's also going to play into what we're already seeing as rampant increases in inflation. So what does that mean? The longer you wait to buy something, probably the longer you're going to have to wait to get something. So some considerations for you moving forward. Work with your IT or your MSP to assess the support status of all of your current hardware and software. Work with your CFO, start determining, hey, if we got to buy new stuff, what's the budget that we can throw at this? What's the expenditure timeline? Go back to that IT, the MSP, right? Figure out, okay, how do we rank order these purchases here? If maybe you have to try and spread that across the year as opposed to buying all new stuff at once. And just remember, you're likely going to have to wait in line for hardware. Don't wait until that line gets longer, because from what we're seeing here, just the way the world is going, it's only going to get worse, and the world is only going to become more chaotic as we move forward in 2022. So if there was ever a time to replace that aging server, or you've got unsupported, let's say, laptops in the field, or you've got physical systems that need to be updated, it's probably a good time to start taking a hard look at all those expenditures. And of course, assess your current cyber insurance policy. We talked about a couple of issues there, the cyber terrorism carve back, as well as that increasingly common exclusion we're seeing on no coverage for legacy hardware or software systems, meaning if they're unsupported, they're just not going to cover that type of breach. All right, with that, please be careful. If you enjoyed this, if you found this useful, I'll make my head bigger. There we go. And you learned something, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and hey, make sure you share with your peers because they're going to want to know this type of information. All right, with that, stay safe.